Have you had problems with cholesterol-lowering medication like statins? Well, if you have, you've come to the right place. But first, in this video, I'm going to break all the rules of salesmanship, and I'm going to give you 8 reasons why you should take whatever I say with a grain of salt. And then I'm going to give you just 2 reasons why I want you to listen to me anyway. Stay tuned. So I hope you took the time to read that disclaimer and to take it seriously. And I'm going to go over 8 caveats, 8 reasons why you should kind of be careful with anything that you hear on this channel. Reason number 1, caveat number 1. I'm not a doctor and I don't play one on TV. Please don't be that patient who goes to his doctor and says, you know, doc, some guy I never met on YouTube said something about this medication you prescribed to me, so I'm not going to take it. Just don't be that patient. I never advise anybody to get off statins if they're on them as prescribed by their doctor. When it comes to secondary prevention, I just don't even want to go there. If something bad were to happen to somebody, which could happen whether they're on statins or not, I don't want them to turn around and blame me, plus it wouldn't be legal for me to give out medical advice. What I'm doing is offering a layman's opinion on what I get out of the literature and the clinical studies. I'm taking a non-physiological approach. In other words, I'm not qualified to go in and talk too much about the biology of it, but I can look at study results and I can understand what they're telling us and what they're claiming. Second, human bodies and our biology are complex and all are different. My experience may be very different than yours. For example, you may have much more benign experience, you may have a worse experience than me. So you can't go by my experience and think that's necessarily what's going to happen with you. Third, group statistics do not apply to individuals and are often contradictory. Well, what do I mean by group statistics? Well, clinical studies give us group statistics. And the problem is, you probably don't match exactly the population that was tested in all meaningful respects. Here's an example from just a different walk of life. In the United States, the average number of children per household, at least at the last census report I saw, was 1.83 children per household. That is the average. But I'm pretty sure that there's no household out there in the United States that has exactly 1.83 children in it. So we have to take these group statistics and consider how they might apply to us. Fourth, items in isolation don't tell the whole story. And that's what we're going to be doing. I'm going to be looking at just this little aspect of it or that little aspect of using statins, and no one of these things is going to be like a silver bullet that says, oh, that's why I'm not going to take statins. I don't even have that. It's like we've got a jigsaw puzzle and we've got all the pieces in a box, and the box didn't even have a picture on it, and we're looking at one piece at a time and we're trying to figure out what is the big picture. And that's going to be very difficult, just looking at one piece at a time, but that's kind of the format that I've chosen for this. You are probably going to get a serious case of what I call the whatabouts as you're watching. You say, well, what about this? What about that? I'll try to get to everything. You know, put your whatabouts in the comments in order to make sure that I know about them, because you may have some that I didn't think of. Fifth, I'm applying my life values. When I look at a clinical result, a statistic, and it tells me, for example, if 8 people take this treatment, on average, 1 of them is going to avoid a heart attack, 5 of them weren't going to have a heart attack at all, and 2 of them have a heart attack anyway. Well, you may look at that and say, well, I guess that's worth it. I look at that and I say, that's not a very good treatment. And you're not wrong, I'm not wrong. This is just a life value that you're applying, and I'm not going to try talking you out of them, and I'm not even going to say that, well, mine are a little better than yours. These are highly personalized things. Sixth, I will be speculating. That's a key word there. And I'm going to be making assumptions. When we do thought experiments, I'll make assumptions, and then the result of the thought experiment is only going to be as good as the assumption matches reality. Maybe it matches it closely, maybe it's only approximate, maybe it's way off. So just be aware of that. A lot of what I'm going to be presenting is speculative. I'll be using anecdotes. We know anecdotes, the term anecdotal evidence is almost considered an oxymoron. Well, anecdotes are just kind of data points without verification and without context given to them. If you get a whole bunch of anecdotes, then maybe you might get an idea that, hey, there's something worth studying here. So anecdotes had a bad rap, but you do have to take them with a grain of salt. Case studies, a case study is like an anecdote that has been verified and has been looked at closely, and maybe we understand what's going on in that particular case, but we don't know how it may statistically apply or how it may apply to other people in similar situations or not similar situations. And then there's analogies. Analogies don't prove anything. When I use an analogy, like that jigsaw puzzle analogy I used earlier, it is to make things easier to understand. They have to come after the discussion and the evidence is presented, and then maybe, it'll help us understand better. But analogies aren't proof, so just keep that in mind. Seventh, I do have an anti-statin bias. If you were to survey everybody who has enough knowledge about statins, at least to have an opinion, you'd get a wide range of viewpoints on it. For example, there are people who think that it ought to be in the water supply, or it ought to be given to everybody over 45 years of age, or it ought to be like a condiment at a fast food restaurant where you can eat a burger and some deep fat fries, and somehow taking a statin you're going to feel good because you just counteracted everything bad you did to your health there. On the other extreme are the people who pull out the pitchforks and torches as soon as they hear the word statin. Now, I'm not all the way over with them. There are some doctors who I have a lot of respect for who say in limited circumstances statins may be an appropriate treatment. There was even one doctor I know who calls himself a statin hater. He's actually taking a low dose statin for his particular health situation. The point is, these doctors closer to where I stand don't use like a cholesterol number and just say, oh, it's going to be treated universally. I am closer to the pitchforks and torches people than I am to the, make it a condiment at the restaurant people. But I'm not all the way over there. I wouldn't just say, extremely, no, never touch those things. There are people who are maybe in really particular circumstances who are in some incredible amount of risk for whom they could benefit. Eighth, and kind of fundamentally, I may simply be wrong. I have to read medical journals. They're very tough to read. They present their data in particular ways that it takes a while to learn. They use a particular jargon. They're not trying to be obtuse. They're not trying to hide things. They're actually trying to communicate better with their peers where, you use certain terminology, you mean it in a very specific way. I mean, just from science in general, for example, the word theory, when used in science, means something very specific. It is a well-established explanatory framework for some phenomenon in nature. We will use it like to say, oh, I have a theory about that, when we're talking about something day to day, and what we really mean, and a scientist would call that a hypothesis. So that's one of the things that we got to be careful about. So here's a recap of all those caveats. And I want you to apply those whenever you're listening to any of my videos. Am I trying to apply group statistics to you personally? Are my values different than yours? Is my anti-statin bias showing through? So keep all these 8 things in mind. So I just gave you 8 reasons not to listen to me. So why do I want you to listen to me? And I have 2 main reasons. First, I hope that by hearing my story, you won't feel so alone if you're experiencing something similar to what I did. I was on statins throughout my 50s, and my health started to go downhill around that time. And I never actually associated it with the statins. I didn't see how there could be a connection with lowering cholesterol with all these things, because I didn't really know a lot. And even when I started to realize that it could be the statins and I experimented, got off them, saw what happened, my doctors were saying, no, you're just getting older. You've got to expect things like this. I was getting sent to specialist after specialist for these weird conditions that I'd never had in my life. And I just think, being in your 50s, that's a little young for your body to start falling apart. So that was my experience with statins. In this video series, I'm not actually going to get to that right away. That'll be a little later in a later video. I'm going to be looking at statistics in the first few videos. But if you're experiencing something similar, I just want you to know that, you're not alone. Secondly, I hope that you can formulate probing questions for your doctor to ensure that you're an informed patient when it comes to statins, because I don't know how it is with all doctors, but I'm fairly certain that the doctors that I was going to, they weren't informed doctors, and there was no way that they were going to make me an informed patient, especially since it would go counter to them giving me a drug, going like this and saying, okay, I've taken care of that patient. So consider what questions that you, in serious conversations, you should have with your doctor. So when I first thought about this YouTube channel, I was thinking, well, I could put together 5 videos and that's about all I have to talk about. So I started to write down in sort of a stream of consciousness way all the topics that I would like to cover. And I was shocked at how, just that thinking led one thing to another. You see them scrolling on the right side of the screen here. And this is just a list of just all the different things that can be covered. I don't know how many this will turn into as far as videos. Some can be combined. Some of them may turn out to be there's really nothing there to talk about, but it was just, there's a lot there. And as you get the whatabouts as you're watching these videos, please put them in the comments so I can add them to my list if it's something new, and make sure that I address your concerns. Again, this is from a non-medical professional's viewpoint, and that's probably the most important thing to keep in mind. So there are 5 things that you can do that are absolutely free to support any YouTube channel that you find of value. You can like the videos. I mean, I do that just to keep track of which videos I've watched and which I haven't. Comment, because that interaction kind of feeds the YouTube algorithm. Share it with other people who you think may benefit from the information. Subscribe to the channel. Certain number of subscribers, we get a certain benefit as far as what we can and can't do with the channel. And hit the notification bell. That way you get informed that there's something new for you to like, comment, and share. So if you're looking for the first subject matter video, I recommend this one. Thanks for listening.